attacked primarily by Hamas, and that Palestine at the moment is paying for electing Hamas as their government decades ago?
Thank you for that question. So the elections that are being referred to was held in 2006. And we didn't have any kind of, as Palestinian people, any kind of alternative. There has been a division between the West Bank and Gaza. The world did not allow us to practice our democratic right after 2006. So we don't really, when we are being punished for something that we elected back in 2006, and the whole world since then, the Palestinians have been calling for elections, have been calling for lifting the siege, have been calling for unification between West Bank and Gaza, have been calling for the empowerment of the Palestinian Authority and the PLO. And all of this went unnoticed. You know what, in Gaza, just 3 months ago, and you can Google it, the videos are there, the people in Gaza were going up against Hamas. They were doing demonstrations, demanding bread, demanding water, demanding accessibility. Nobody took them seriously because the status quo was convenient. There was a management of the conflict. As long as it is convenient, there's no high number of casualties, this can go on. The moment we saw 1,400 Israeli civilians being killed, and now we're seeing more than 10,000 civilians being killed on the Palestinian side, now it's an issue. Now we need, and that's what we need right now, is not to manage the conflict anymore. What we need right now is to find a political solution to end this. And we need to immediately go into negotiations, at least some kind of a political discussion going on between different parties. And we have enough examples in the world to guide us.
Last but not the least, how do you assess on reports that an alternative to the Suez Canal, namely the Ben-Gurion Canal project, is also one of the reasons for Israel's counteroffensive on Gaza?
To tell you the truth, I have seen it, I have read some reports about it as well, but to tell you the truth, if this was the actual reason, I think that would be a perfect formula for a regional war and maybe a third world war, because basically here it involves Egypt, it involves Saudi Arabia, it might involve other countries in the region as well, because it involves interests by the end of the day. So I'm not sure if this is the right reason behind it or not, but imagine this, if this was the right reason behind it, right? But if we had peace, if we had a true peace between the Palestinians and the Israelis and the region, and this Ben-Gurion Canal actually happened, everybody is going to actually benefit from it. The fact that we are waging a war to get a canal is not going to make that canal safe. We need peace to make that canal safe, and so that everybody in the region can actually benefit from it.
Thank you so much for being in here on CNN News 18. Naveen, it was a pleasure to have you here and get your precious insights. Thank you so much. Stay safe.
Thank you.
And over to the United Kingdom now. King Charles III made his first King's speech as he opened the UK Parliament, and Britain set out its plans to tackle crime, boost growth and reduce the climate burden in an agenda written by the government but delivered by King Charles III. To lawmakers packed into Parliament's ornate House of Lords, Rishi Sunak signalled his intent to create a dividing line with the opposition Labour Party before the vote expected next year. There was little new in the King's speech, more of a collection of what Sunak has worked on since becoming Prime Minister last year, on a pledge to bring stability after two fellow Conservative leaders were forced from power in a matter of just weeks. And King Charles is turning 75 on 14th of November, but his younger son Prince Harry will not be part of the celebrations. There have been multiple reports speculating the absence of Harry at his father's 75th birthday celebrations. Most have stated that Harry had declined this invitation. Remember, Harry lives with his wife Meghan Markle and their two children in the United States after the couple quit their role as senior members of the British royal family in 2021. Also, a spokesperson for the Duke of Sussex has called these reports disappointing and clarified that Harry, in fact, has not been invited to the celebrations. The king and his younger son share a strained relationship, as has become public knowledge. Now, earlier this year, Harry had admitted that he was not in touch with his father or older brother, Prince William. 5 winners of Prince William's 2023 Environmental Earthshot Prize were also announced yesterday. The winners of the annual Eco Awards were revealed at a star-studded ceremony at the theatre at MediaCorp in Singapore. Each walked away with £1 million to scale up their pioneering projects. Prince William and his Royal Foundation launched this ambitious 10-year initiative in 2020 with a goal of funding 50 solutions to some of the planet's most urgent environmental problems by 2030. Here's a reaction from King Charles, also a report on Prince Harry.
My lords and members of the House of Commons, it is mindful of a legacy of service and devotion to this country set by my beloved mother, the late Queen, that I deliver this, the first King's speech in over 70 years. The impact of COVID and the war in Ukraine have created significant long-term challenges for the United Kingdom. That is why my government's priority is to make the difficult but necessary long-term decisions to change this country for the better. My minister's focus is on increasing economic growth and safeguarding the health and security of the British people for generations to come.
Sorry, it's taking us a while. We've been chatting, sweating, and doing a lot of walking.
So my job mainly revolves around doing wildlife research, going to the forest, surveying. Hopefully it's not too long of a wait. Actually wait long, I think.
No, I'm based in Sabah for the past 25 years.
Which part of Sabah?
You're watching CNN News 18 Global. I'm Akanksha Swaroop. Let's begin with our top focus on the Israel-Hamas war. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has said that his country would consider tactical pauses in Gaza for entry of aid or exit of hostages. But again, he has rejected calls for a general humanitarian ceasefire despite growing international pressure. Now, Netanyahu says that there would be no ceasefire or fuel delivery to Gaza before Hamas releases Israeli hostages and has warned Hezbollah against joining Hamas in fighting Israel's forces. Also, US President Joe Biden has said that he has asked Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu for a pause in fighting in Gaza during a phone call. Now, two leaders discussed the potential for tactical pauses in fighting in Gaza for humanitarian reasons and possible hostage releases during their conversation. Despite all this, Netanyahu has said that Israel's military was encircling Gaza City and operating inside it as it pressed on with a month-long offensive against Hamas. In fact, Israel's IDF is now claiming of destroying Hamas's tunnels. Interestingly, a fresh angle in the Hamas-Israel conflict has also emerged now. Reportedly, Israel's Prime Minister Netanyahu wants to deliver the Ben-Gurion Canal project. It is a project that was first proposed in the 60s. Now, how is it associated with the war? Let me break it down for you. It would connect the Gulf of Aqaba on the Red Sea to the Mediterranean Sea. At the same time, it's important to note that this canal would rival Egypt's Suez Canal. Named after the first Prime Minister of Israel, the Ben-Gurion Canal will be 3 times longer than the Suez Canal. Whoever controls this canal will have enormous influence over the global supply routes for oil, grain and shipping. The only thing stopping the newly revised project from being revived is the presence of the Palestinians in Gaza. This is what reports are indicating. Reportedly, the Palestinian presence in Gaza is standing in the way of this project, a project which several political experts believe may earn the Israeli Prime Minister forgiveness in Tel Aviv for the intelligence and military shortcomings on October 7th when Hamas attacked Israel. In other major war-related events, the group of 7 foreign ministers met in Tokyo, where they discussed issues including the war in Gaza. And US Secretary of State Antony Blinken said that Israel cannot occupy Gaza. Winding up the two-day meet in Tokyo, Blinken said that a period of transition with regards to post-conflict governance in Gaza was possible. Meanwhile, British Foreign Secretary James Cleverly has said that reiterating Britain's support for a two-state solution, that a move towards a peace-loving leadership in Palestine is the most desired outcome in the Israel-Hamas conflict. So now you have two voices over there supporting the Palestinian cause, and a government that is pro-Palestine, which is of course US and the UK now speaking in support of a Palestinian government. Also, Japanese Foreign Minister Yoko Kamikawa stated 3 important points. She said that first, to unequivocally condemn the terrorist attack by Hamas. Secondly, it is important to seek the immediate release of hostages. Thirdly, to take urgent action to address the humanitarian crisis in Gaza. Now, G7 foreign ministers have issued a unified message on the Israel-Hamas war, including a call for a humanitarian pause in this fighting. But that stood was the United States' rejection. Now, and what stood out was the US has rejected Israel's plans of reoccupying Gaza. But at the same time, important to highlight that there's been a lot of back and forth as far as Israel's plan of reoccupying Gaza is concerned. In the meantime, let me also play out all the reactions, starting with Benjamin Netanyahu, even the US president, and to bring you most importantly, the US Secretary of State Antony Blinken's message from the G7 foreign ministers meet.
Gaza City is encircled. We are operating inside it. We are increasing pressure on Hamas every hour, every day. We have killed thousands of terrorists, above ground and below ground. No ceasefire without the release of our hostages.
During these hours too, we are fighting at the most significant center of the Gaza Strip. This is where I just returned from now. For the first time in decades, the Israeli Defense Forces are fighting in the heart of Gaza City, at the heart of terrorism. This is a complex and difficult war, and to my sorrow, it also comes at a price.
Heat pumps?
Did you ask the Prime Minister of Israel for a 3-day pause?
I didn't get a chance to talk to him. I did ask him for a pause in the past, yesterday. Still waiting to hear some other things.
We had in-depth discussions about the steps that we are taking to address urgent needs on the ground. We all agreed that humanitarian pauses would advance key objectives: to protect Palestinian civilians, to increase the sustained flow of humanitarian assistance, to allow our citizens and foreign nationals to exit, and to facilitate the release of hostages. The United States believes key elements should include no forcible displacement of Palestinians from Gaza. Not now, not after the war. When it comes to post-conflict governance in Gaza, a few things are clear and necessary. One, Gaza cannot be continue to be run by Hamas. That simply invites a repetition of October 7th, and Gaza used as a place from which to launch terrorist attacks. It's also clear that Israel cannot occupy Gaza. What I've heard from Israeli leaders is that they have no intent to reoccupy Gaza and retake control of Gaza. So the only question is there some transition period that might be necessary, and mechanisms that you could put in place for that to make sure that there is security. First, I should say this. We are planning for a constructive meeting between the leaders. We're still working on those plans. I think both sides have acknowledged the importance of leader-level channels in managing the relationship. And we both agree that we have an obligation, the United States and China, to responsibly manage the relationship. And that really, in many ways, starts and finishes with leader-level engagement.
Well, obviously what we're seeing at the moment is an Israeli military operation in Gaza. Their explicit aim is to remove Hamas from the leadership of the Palestinian people. The UK government's position has long been that we want to see a Palestinian leadership for the Palestinian people, committed to peace, committed to a two-state solution. In the short term, it is inevitable that Israel, because they have the troops in Gaza, will need to have security responsibility. But our view is, as soon as is practicable, a move towards a peace-loving Palestinian leadership as the most desired outcome. We have, of course, raised the future leadership of the Palestinian people with the Israeli government, but the UK's position is clear, it is unchanging. We want to see a two-state solution with a Palestinian state and an Israeli state living side by side in peace.
We have agreed to allow undisrupted humanitarian assistance, including food, water, medical care, fuel, shelter, and access for those involved in humanitarian aid access to Gaza, especially to support a humanitarian pause and humanitarian corridor for ease of delivery aid to Gaza. We have agreed to allow undisrupted humanitarian assistance, including food, water, medical care, fuel, shelter, and access for those involved in humanitarian aid access to Gaza, especially to support a humanitarian pause and humanitarian corridor for ease of delivery aid to Gaza.
Now remember, it was on October 7 when Hamas attacked Israel, and it was on October 8 that Israel declared a state of war. And ever since Israel began to attack Gaza, this has amounted to a humanitarian disaster. But where is this war headed, and what is the cost being paid by Palestinians? Let's try and get in a sense of perspective. I spoke with Naveen Sanduka, who's a Palestinian activist. Let's listen in to this exclusive.
Naveen Sanduka, thank you so much for joining us here at CNN News 18. Now, to begin with, on October 7, Hamas attacked Israel, and on October 8, Israel declared a state of war. 1 month on, and what has Israel achieved in this war?
I'm not sure about the military goals that they stated they're going to achieve. Up until now, we are seeing a war going on between Hamas and Israel. We're also seeing another front on the northern front. We also saw some rockets being hit from Yemen. So I'm not sure if we're actually advancing. And on top of that, 60 Israeli hostages were also killed during Israeli offensives. And the number of casualties on the Palestinian side, more than 10,000 Palestinians are killed, mostly civilians, 5,000 of which are children. So it's if these are the results, and up until now, this is what we know. But in sense of military achievement, I'm not sure we have heard any good news or bad news.
Naveen, on Monday, Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu told a US broadcaster that Israel would take responsibility for security in Gaza for an indefinite period. How do you weigh in on Israel's plans of reoccupying Gaza?
So this is the thing. According to international humanitarian law, when a piece of land is put under the authority of another entity, this is considered occupation. The 7th of October is an event that there was siege over Gaza for more than 15 years. There was occupation of the West Bank and Gaza and East Jerusalem for more than 50 years. So there has been occupation. Occupation is still going on in the future Palestinian state in the West Bank and East Jerusalem and Gaza. So to say that we are going to enter again and resume control, they have always been there. It's true, there hasn't been any physical presence, but maybe the life of the Gazans is actually going to be better. Maybe at least the siege is going to be lifted in that sense, and they're going to have some kind of accessibility to the world.
Now, we are all aware that the G7 foreign ministers met in Japan. Now, US Secretary of State Antony Blinken has rejected Israel's plan to maintain overall security responsibility for the Gaza Strip after the war, saying that Palestinian Authority must ultimately take charge and not Israel. And yet Washington has failed to persuade Tel Aviv to pause its offensive against Gaza. Why is the United States struggling to exert its influence in the region and over Israel?
Well, I'm not sure if they have failed or not, but I guess once you make a statement as a president of the United States that Israel has your ultimate support, then they have your ultimate support. So it's also, if I were an Israeli, and I'm not an Israeli, but if I were an Israeli leader and you're telling me I have your ultimate support, and then you're telling me to stop, it's a little bit like, no, I have your ultimate support. Why should I stop? I think we need here to go back again to the international humanitarian law. We need to hold all parties responsible under international humanitarian law. We need to protect civilians. We need to have a third party on the ground to protect the civilians. And we need to make sure that there is a humanitarian corridor and people are not starving to death.
That's why I want to ask you, let's take a moment to deep dive into the need for tactical pauses, as has been agreed by Israel, versus the need for humanitarian ceasefire. Israel believes that it cannot afford a ceasefire since that will help Hamas to regroup and re-strategize. But amid this military strategy,